Hello, everybody. Thank you for participating and celebrating in C.A.R.E Indeed's 10th anniversary. It is an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this celebration. My name is Tami, Anastasia, and I am an Alzheimer's and dementia consultant and educator. I'm also a health and wellness counselor, and I also facilitate 3 local dementia caregiver support groups. And I do also provide monthly educational workshops through ElderConsult. Today, I'm going to discuss the emotional impact COVID and sheltering in place have had on us. And I'm also going to provide you with some COVID self-care strategies. So I'm going to begin today's presentation by going over some of the psychological aspects of COVID and sheltering in place. One of the first things we need to keep in mind is that we weren't prepared for COVID and sheltering in place. It occurred suddenly. We had no way to prepare psychologically, emotionally, and physically. So we're still in the midst of trying to sort it out and understand basically what happened in such an abrupt, short time. So that's one thing we need to keep in mind from a psychological perspective, is there was no preparation. The second thing we want to keep in mind is that the uncertainty as to how long this is going to last keeps us in limbo. And because we're in limbo, COVID and sheltering in place are bringing to the surface a lot of underlying emotions and feelings. Some of the most common underlying feelings and emotions that are coming to the surface are the following: loneliness, feeling isolated, depression. I have a lot of private clients sharing with me the grief and sadness they feel because of the lack of social connection and physical contact. Others have been sharing with me the loss of independence they feel, and there's also been a lot of fear, anger, frustration, and anxiety. So these are normal feelings given the circumstances that we're dealing with. So the key now is, how do we cope with these feelings and emotions? And one of the best ways to do that is to empower yourself. So there are several ways we can empower ourselves. One of them is by being proactive versus passive. The other thing you want to do is focus on the things you can change and the things you can do. Often what happens is we get caught up in putting a lot of time and energy into the things we do not have control over, and you want to shift that focus and put your time and energy into things we have control over, into the things we can change and the things we can do. So one of the things you want to start doing is to do things that give you a sense of independence and give you a sense of social connection, as long as we do them within the safety guidelines. The other thing you want to consider doing is limit the exposure that you have to negativity. In other words, you might want to consider limiting your exposure to the news. And because right now, we need to put our time and energy into coping with this pandemic, with sheltering in place, in a way that enhances our emotional, physical, and mental well-being. And that negativity can interfere with that. And another way to empower yourself is to put into practice the COVID self-care strategies that I'm going to discuss. The C.A.R.E in self-care is an acronym, and I'm going to go through what each of the letters stands for. So the first thing is the C. C stands for 2 things. The first thing the C stands for is to comfort yourself. When we're in the midst of a crisis or a pandemic like COVID, there is a tendency for us to forget to do things that are very comforting. And we need to make a conscious effort to do things that are going to comfort us, especially during a time where it's very stressful, it's very unsettling, and it's been very, very difficult and challenging. So I advise a lot of my private clients to take a daily shelter-in-place time out and make a conscious effort to do things that are comforting or nurturing. So once a day, you want to ask yourself, what can I do today that would be comforting or nurturing? And some client examples are they're gardening, journaling, some are taking time out to meditate, for prayer, some are going for walks. Whatever brings you comfort, you want to get into the habit of doing something once a day. The second thing the C stands for is to connect with others. We need to initiate connecting with others. Don't wait for people to contact you. Don't wait to reach out to other people. You want to initiate that. We need to feel a sense of connection. And however we create that is up to us. So you could do it in several different ways. You could call friends and family, do it by telephone. Maybe you want to write some letters, or maybe you want to send some cards. That's one of the first things I did, is I sent out about 20 cards to people who are special in my life or important or play a significant role in my life. And I just wanted to write a little note to let them know I was thinking of them. And as a matter of fact, that's something I'm going to do again this month, because it makes me feel connected, and it makes me feel good that I'm extending a message to them that I'm thinking about them. And it's not about them reaching back out to me. It's the fact that I'm doing something that makes me feel connected to other people. And it can be done, like I said, in many different ways. Maybe you want to think about participating in a volunteer project, or maybe you schedule some virtual social events. However you need to make it happen, it's up to you to initiate that. And I want to encourage you to initiate that and not wait for other people to do that. The A in the CARE acronym also stands for two things. The first thing the A stands for is acceptance. And I want to be very clear, by acceptance, I am no means trying to downplay what we're going through. Actually, it's quite the opposite. What we're going through is traumatic. What we're going through is dramatic. And so if we stay caught up in what was, we aren't going to be able to make the changes that are necessary given what is. So one of the things you want to do is accept that sheltering in place most likely is our new normal. We may not like it, but it's something we have to accept so we can make changes that are going to make the best of the circumstances that we're in. The second thing you want to think about is accept that our lives are different than before COVID. Our lives are extremely different. I don't know about you, but my whole schedule pre-COVID came to a halt, and I've had to make a lot of changes and modify a lot of things so that I can make this time as meaningful and as important to me as I can possibly make it. Acceptance also, again, I'm going to go back to focus on the things you have control over. A lot of times we get caught up on the things, again, that we have no control over. Put that valuable time and energy back into you and put it into the things that you can control and the things that you can do. And by accepting our current circumstances is going to allow us to create new habits and engage in activities that are important to you, that give you a sense of achievement, give you a sense of accomplishment, and give you a sense of satisfaction, but more importantly, engage in activities that give you peace of mind. The R in the CARE, the A in the other second A in the CARE acronym stands for activities. So I get a lot of calls. I don't know what to do with myself. There's so many restrictions. There's so many things that I can't do. So I thought what I'd try to do is help people out. And I came up with 5 different activities, 5 different categories of activities that you can choose from. The first category I titled hobbies. You may want to think about getting back involved in a hobby that you used to do, or maybe pick up a new hobby. The second one is called fun, leisure, and entertainment. And I'm going to highly recommend that you do something once a day that is joyful, once a day that makes you happy, that you do something to offset the negativity, to offset the restrictions that have been imposed on us, that once a day you find ways to do something that makes your heart sing, something that makes you smile. So one of the things I do on a daily basis is I have 3 things. There's Leave It to Beaver, there is Little House on the Prairie, and I Love Lucy. Those were shows that I was raised on, and once a day I make sure that I watch one of those daily because they make me smile, they make me feel good. Another third category is exercise and physical movement. And when I'm talking about exercise and physical movement, it's not about walking 10,000 steps. It's not about getting your heart rate up and sweating. It's simply moving your body, moving your muscles, moving your joints, and getting the blood circulating. And it could be the gentlest of exercises. It could be doing exercises in a chair. It could be marching in place. Maybe you just want to do some stretches. But it's really, really important that if 2 or 3 times a week, you could just do something very simple that would move your body. Moving our body and stimulating our mind are the 2 things that increase and improve our quality of life the most. So when I'm saying physical movement and exercise, I'm thinking of gentle movements, just again to get the blood circulating through your body and stimulating your muscles and your joints. And the 4th category I called social engagement. Here again, you're going to want to initiate connecting, and there's different ways you might want to do that. Maybe we schedule in-person social distancing visits or outings, or maybe you want to do Zoom or FaceTime. I have clients that are doing virtual happy hours, and I have some clients who are playing virtual bingo. But here again, it's going to be up to you to initiate that social engagement. And the 5th category I titled virtual activities. And that, again, so many things we're not going to be able to do in person for a long time. So we're slowly starting to offer things virtually. Music concerts, tours of museums, and you may want to attend a webinar. There's so many different webinars being offered. Or maybe it's that you play some virtual games or crossword puzzles. I personally do virtual crossword puzzles every day, at least 2 or 3 times a day. The R in the CARE acronym stands for routine. It is really, really, really important that you try to establish a routine that is consistent. Again, prior to COVID, I had a certain routine, and once COVID hit, again, my whole routine came to an abrupt halt. So I've had to figure out ways to modify and create a new, what I call shelter-in-place schedule. And some of the things I've done is I created some new rituals to replace the things I no longer can do. And now I filled those gaps and put some what I call sheltering-in-place rituals in place so that I can now follow a schedule. And what do I mean by a schedule? A consistent schedule. I don't mean rigid, but that you get up and you go to bed around the same time every day, and you do the sequence of activities in the same order, and that you do them around the same time of day. And you can change what the activity is, but for example, you get up at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock is breakfast, maybe 10 o'clock you go for a walk, 11 o'clock is lunch, 12 o'clock you go for a drive, but somehow there's sequence and there's structure to your day. And studies show when we follow a consistent routine, it provides stability, it provides predictability, it gives us a sense of normalcy, and it provides structure, but more important, it gives us a sense of purpose to our day. And the benefits are it decreases anxiety, it improves our sleep, and it also increases productivity. So think about what can you do to get back on a regular schedule so that it's fulfilling, one, but it also gives you a sense of purpose. The E in the CARE acronym stands for two things. The first thing the E stands for is to expand your support network. When I'm working with clients one-on-one, one of the first questions I ask them, especially during this time, is what kind of support system do you have in place? And often people will share with me, they have one or two people that, that are very supportive, but at some point they tell me, but I don't call them as frequently because I don't want to burden them. As the saying goes, we are all in this together. We're all being affected by what's going on, and we all have concerns, we all have frustrations, we all have our own fears, and we need to support one another. So I want to encourage you to expand your support network. So if you need to talk to somebody, if you need a shoulder to cry on, that there are people that you could reach out to and not feel you're going to burden them. So your support network could consist of family and friends. You may want to join a support group. You may want to contact a professional counselor like myself, or a therapist, or maybe you want to speak to your doctor, an MD, or a geriatrician. And maybe you want to think about calling a spiritual guide, or possibly a spiritual leader, or again, participating in some spiritual community. And for those of you who are alone and taking care of a family member who has some sort of cognitive impairment or has had a stroke and is very limited, and if you need help, I'm going to encourage you to reach out and utilize outside resources. Early on, March, April, May, I wasn't quite sure whether I should recommend that, but now that I know that this is going to be longer term than what we expected, I know all of the resources that I refer to and that I work closely with are going to great lengths to follow a preventative protocol. So if you need help, please reach out, ask for help, bring in some in-home care services like Care Indeed, or possibly think about hiring companion care. But we're going through a lot as it is. You're going through it even more if you're taking care of someone and you don't have that support. So please reach out if you need it. And I highly recommend that you make your support network part of your weekly schedule, that you have built-in systems of support that you can get every single week. I happen to have a friend in New York. We talked maybe, twice a year. Since COVID has hit, we talk every single Saturday night at 7 o'clock without any fail. And we've been doing it every single week since March. So build in the support network so it's part of your consistent schedule. The second thing the E stands for in the CARE acronym is to establish an emergency plan. God forbid something should happen to you. And when I talk to people about what kind of emergency plan do they have in place, people will often tell me, oh, I have an emergency plan in place as a couple, and they have an emergency plan in place if something happens to their loved one. But if you live alone or you're taking care of someone with cognitive impairment, I want to highly recommend that you sign up for a medical alert or life alert program. Because if something should happen to you, it's likely that your loved one who has dementia or has a brain injury isn't going to know to call 911. And if you live alone, we're not going to know something happened to you. So at least sign up for the bare minimum, and that is if something should happen to you, the proper authorities can be notified and act on your behalf. The other thing you want to consider doing, especially now, is to make sure your medical and legal documents are completed. If you haven't started that process, now would be a good time to start the process. If you started the process and you haven't completed it, now would be a really good time to complete those forms. And you also want to make a list of medications. If there's an emergency, it's going to be really, really beneficial to you and the medical people that you have a list of all the medications that your loved one is taking, that you're taking, or anyone in the household, because that's going to be one of the first things they're going to want to know. So you'll simplify a lot of the crises if you have this list already available. And the other thing you want to do is you want to write down the name of an emergency contact person, but be sure it's somebody who is local. I've been involved in families in a medical situation and their emergency contact person lives 5 hours away or they live in another state. You want to have a local person to be able to represent you, to be available immediately on your behalf, whatever is needed. And I would advise that you take that list of medications and you write down the local name of a contact person and you put it in an envelope and you stick it on the refrigerator because you want it easily accessible, easily available. And a lot of times when EMT people come into a home, one of the first places they're going to check for documents is going to be on the refrigerator. So this concludes the CARE strategies, and I hope you will find them beneficial. In closing, what I'd like to do is to read a quote by Wayne Dyer, but I would love it if you would please read this quote with me out loud. So on 3, we'll read this together, and I hope that you'll read it out loud. 1, 2, and 3. Peace is the result of retraining your mind to process life as it is rather than as you think it should be. I want to thank you all again for celebrating the 10th anniversary of Care Indeed. And I want to send my best wishes to you and your family. Please take care of yourselves, and I wish you the very, very best. Thank you very much.